Tuesday night, the kind where nothing needs deciding. The homework will get done, the dishes will get washed, the lights will come back on in the morning, they always do. You don't notice the assumption, you never have to. The news is on in the background. The anchor mentions a flu cluster somewhere overseas, 2 seconds, muted, scrolled past. There's always something. The dad figures it's nothing. It's always nothing. Weeks later, the school closes. Out of caution, they say. Months later, the power goes out. The phone finds no signal. And the same living room, same rug, same puzzle is lit by a single candle. The youngest looks up and asks the only question that matters now. Can we ever build another one? Not yes or no. The real answer is a sequence, what comes back first, what comes back last, and why. But before we get there, you need to understand what actually kills the people who make it this far, and it isn't what you think. The food is still there, all of it, untouched, sealed, and waiting, because the people who usually take it home stopped coming. An average supermarket holds enough non-perishable calories to feed one person for 55 years. Starvation was never the real threat. Something else kills you first. The medicine cabinet isn't empty either. The US military tested stockpiles of expired medications. 88% remained highly effective, an average of 5.5 years past the printed label. The pharmacy doesn't stop working when the grid goes down. The water does. The grid collapses within 24 hours. Backup generators at hospitals and water pumping stations exhaust their diesel within a week. The water towers drain. Sewage backs up into the streets. And then waterborne disease, cholera, dysentery becomes the dominant killer. Not violence, not hunger. Contaminated water in the city you stayed in. There is one more threat in this cascade, and it's slower and invisible. Spent nuclear fuel pools lose their active cooling within days of a grid failure. Within months, the sites around them become no-go zones, radiological contamination spreading on the wind with no smell, no sound, no warning. Geography becomes a survival skill. Knowing where the old reactor sites are is as important as knowing where the clean water is. Most people don't leave in time. Disaster research calls it milling, waiting for someone else to move first, looking for social proof that things are really as bad as they seem. The city becomes a biological hazard, but people stay, tethered to the familiar, to the sunk cost of the home, until the window closes. The ones who make it, the ones who leave before the water fails, they have the food, the medicine, the head start. But having supplies isn't the same as having a plan. What actually separates a survivor group from a group that just has stuff? The world you walk into isn't empty, it's full. Uncomfortably full of things you recognize but can no longer operate. Refined steel, intact solar panels, chemistry textbooks, precision instruments. Everything the old civilization needed to run, and none of the people who knew how to run it. You don't inherit a stone age. You inherit a decaying warehouse, the most advanced one that has ever existed. The scarcity isn't materials, it's the knowledge of how those materials connect. A salvaged car alternator and an improvised water wheel are useless without someone who knows the wiring between them. The bottleneck isn't steel. It is the page that explains what to do with steel. And it has to arrive in the right order. Technology isn't a collection of inventions. It's a dependency tree. You cannot wire a battery bank before you have functional glass to make the instruments to test it. You cannot make glass before you have the kiln to fire it. Every layer depends on the one below. There is no skipping. Even groups with the right manuals aren't safe from themselves. Tight survivor communities tend to choose comfortable consensus over hard truths, prioritizing defense over sanitation, because the argument for defense is easier to win. The group agrees, the wrong call gets made, quietly, unanimously, by people doing their best. Everything else on the list, the gasifier, the kiln, the chemistry, none of it happens while people are hungry. Hunger doesn't wait. It pulls every available body back to the field every day until there's nothing left for anything else. One farmer has to feed 5 people before anyone else is free to do anything at all. That ratio is the precondition for civilization. Always has been. The disease threat from Chapter 1 is answered first, and cheaply. Water filtered through improvised sand and charcoal, then boiled or treated with a pinch of pool chlorine. Ash and rendered fat cooked down into soap. These two things, clean water and soap, cut the waterborne mortality that kills the most people in the first year. They cost almost nothing. They require no special tools. Food is next. A civilization cannot specialize if everyone is subsistence farming. One farmer needs to feed roughly 5 people, freeing the other 4 to build, repair, and think. That requires nitrogen-fixing crop rotation. Cereal grains alternating with legumes, peas, lentils, clover, phosphorus from dissolved animal bone, soil acidity corrected with crushed limestone, ancient techniques, completely viable without a single synthetic input. But even with food secured and disease held back, nothing scales without power. And here is the problem. That tractor in the barn, that generator out back, they run on fuel that has already started dying. Ethanol-blended gasoline breaks down in 30 to 90 days. Even stabilized, it's dead for any engine within 1 to 3 years. Every machine left behind is already a monument, not a tool. You feel the heat before your eyes adjust. Something is burning, controlled, sustained, deliberate. And then the engine turns over. It catches. It runs on wood. That sound, an internal combustion engine running on scrap timber, is the sound of the fuel problem being solved. Wood gasification works by breaking down wood in a low-oxygen chamber, pyrolysis, which produces a burnable mixture of carbon monoxide and hydrogen. That gas feeds directly into any unmodified internal combustion engine. Tractors, generators, heavy vehicles, running on scrap lumber at 70 to 80% of their original power. No oil well required. Alongside the gasifier, survivors bootstrap a chemical industry from scratch. Potash, potassium carbonate, leached from hardwood ash. Soda ash and slaked lime roasted out of limestone in a simple kiln. These are alkalis, and every industrial process downstream depends on them. Soap, mortar, glass, agriculture, potash, and lime are the first chemical rung of the ladder. The hardest chemical to produce is sulfuric acid, and it's also the most important. The Old World method requires baking pyrite, what miners call fool's gold, to release sulfur dioxide, then reacting and hydrating it. It's dangerous work. It's also the gateway to batteries, advanced synthesis, and the rest of industrial chemistry. Without it, you stall at the agrarian stage. With it, you have a chemical industry. Mechanical power, crude chemistry. These get you to a rugged 19th century, but not further, because none of it means anything without glass. Sand, potash, and lime fired past 1400 degrees becomes crude, bubbled, faintly green glass, filled with impurities, rough-edged, nothing like a modern window. And it doesn't need to be. It needs to be a lens, because without a lens, you cannot see the microbes killing you. Without that, germ theory is a rumor, not a tool. You now know the order: sanitation and exodus first, food surplus second, mechanical power and chemistry third. Glass and the scientific method close behind. But knowing the sequence isn't the same as skipping the weight. So the real question isn't whether we could rebuild. It's what comes back in 5 years and what might not come back for 50. Yes, humans could rebuild, and dramatically faster than the first time, because the first time nobody knew what they were building toward. This time, the scientific method itself is a shortcut. Once you have glass and germ theory, you don't repeat 2,000 years of guesswork. You already know the answers. You're just remanufacturing the tools. Open source blueprints make this concrete. The Global Village construction set is a collection of 50 modular industrial machines, brick presses, tractors, automated routers, each one designed to be built from scrap and local materials with basic tools. It turns rebuilding an industrial base from an impossible mystery into a checklist, a buildable one. Mechanical power could return within years. Basic chemistry, local electrical generation, also years. These are achievable by small groups with preserved knowledge and the right sequence. But semiconductors are a different problem entirely. A microchip doesn't just require knowledge. It requires thousands of interlocking specialists, ultra-pure materials, and supply chains that took decades to build the first time. That doesn't come back in years, it comes back in decades, maybe generations. Getting back to today wasn't one invention. It was a web. Millions of specialists, each knowing one thing deeply, all of them connected. Rebuilding that web is the real project, not the knowledge, not the materials, the web. So if it happened tonight with everyone you love and everything you currently know, would you know where to even begin? The sequence in full. Get out of dying cities before the water fails, that's your window, and it closes fast. Protect technical knowledge above everything else. Build the agricultural surplus that frees people to specialize. Restart mechanical power with wood gasification. Bootstrap the chemical industry with ash and limestone and pyrite. And only then climb back toward precision manufacturing, years for some of it, generations for the rest. None of it works if the knowledge doesn't survive the first year. The sequence only matters to someone who already has it before the lights go out. Link in the description. And if you want to know how an outbreak like this actually begins, watch this video in the end screen. Subscribe to Gridfall Survival. New episodes on the systems, skills, and knowledge that actually matter before you need them. Prepare, adapt, outlast.